Hey, what's up, everyone? You're currently tuned into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara. Light Talk and I are joined by Josh Tabbia of Cop Funeral and Already Dead. How you doing, Josh?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Dude, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, we had a really fun show like a couple weeks ago. We were just talking about it like briefly, like right before, but RIP to Control. It's like gone now and stuff. But that gig was super fun.
That was such a fun show. That's such a bummer that they're done.
It happens, dude. Do you have any like other shows or anything lined up or?
Right now, I'm mostly focused on, I'm booking a tour in May with a good friend of mine who does a project called Painted Faces. We're kind of doing like East Coast to Midwest. So working on that mostly. And I got a couple things cooking for possibly in April in the LA area. So yeah.
Sick, dude.
Is this to hear that. Or is this your first post-COVID tour that you're doing out there on the East Coast?
Yeah, it'll be the first tour in quite a while.
Oh, goodness.
That's sick, dude. Do you know how long it's going to be?
I think we're looking at like 10 or 11 days. So it's going to be a trek, but it'll be good because I'll get to see a lot of people I've worked with over the years and stuff because I've moved around a lot. So it'll be good. I'll hit a lot of the spots I used to live and catch up with people. And it'll be
in the time that Already Dead has existed out there, how many times have you moved at least, you think?
The label started when I was in college in Michigan. Then my wife and I moved to Chicago, New York, briefly Atlanta, and then LA. So 5. Wow, I didn't even know the number. So
whoa. Okay.
Dude, that's sick.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we do want to talk a little bit too about just where you lived and got into like DIY and stuff. But before that, I just want to ask too, I don't know, how has your new year been so far? Like, what does that look like for you outside of music and stuff? Like,
good, just kind of getting back into things. I feel like December is always like, going to parties and seeing people, kind of just like taking a little bit of a break. So getting back into stuff. I just put out this like feature horror film on VHS for this director, Robbie Smith. So I've been busy just working on like, the releases, and I did like a live Cop Funeral tape this month. So it felt productive, honestly, which feels good. It feels good to already have something, out there this early in the year.
Yeah.
Are you
go ahead?
Or no, Thomas, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, what do you do like outside of like Already Dead for like work and stuff? Like, I think I saw on your website you do graphic design.
Yeah, I used to do that. I do a little bit of freelance here and there. That used to be like my full-time gig, and like the label was the side hustle. But now I just honestly make money doing different kind of arts and things like that. So a little bit of the design stuff, but mostly trying to make money as an artist. So figure out ways to grow the label. I started selling like used records and stuff through the website and things like that. Just, I love thrifting and flea marketing and all that. So just figuring out ways to make a living, not hating life, because I was doing the kind of like corporate startup tech company design.
Yeah. Was that like kind of like soul sucking, you feel like?
Very much. Yeah.
Cause it looked like, I don't know, just looking at like your portfolio on like your website, it looked like everything was just very like cookie cutter, like stuff you find on like Canva or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, and then like the stuff you did from Already Dead looked like there was actually like, passion in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. People would hire me because they would see that Already Dead stuff or like my illustration work, and they would want that. But through the process of working on a project, they eventually just edit you down to like the generic.
Oh, really? So they would be the ones that would be like, no, like we want this to look simpler.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's weird getting hired for your creativity and then being kind of like,
like pigeonholed and like
exactly.
Forced to like not actually put your own like personal touches and style into the work.
Yeah. I think a lot of those companies are like afraid to take risks, So if like I did some cool, weird drawing, they'd be like, it's really cool, but what if somebody has so they like to play it safe.
When did you like get, sorry, go ahead, Maddie.
Kind of like tangibly related to this, because you were mentioning VHS stuff and you had done cover art for that in that line, at least. Is that like for kind of like directors or little labels that you're doing stuff there? Has that always been easy? I know Already Dead's done some, and they've come out really nicely, and they have that. I see the Dawn of the Dead one poster in the background there, and it's like they have that vibe very well. They really do a great justification of that.
Yeah. It's been good. I'm working with, doing stuff for Already Dead and working with the artists I work with and other small labels that I'm friends with. It's just way more fulfilling work, honestly.
Mm-hmm. So you never, especially when doing like VHS, there's that kind of oversight never comes into play. It's a much easier, looser.
Yeah, because I think there's like more of a shared vision and a shared goal, between me and like the artist or whoever. There's just more genuine collaboration there than in like the startup tech world,
Yeah.
And at least because there is some interesting VHS stuff going on in LA. At least there's one store I know that does like a swap hub whammy audio. Mm-hmm. Does that really swap? And I'm kind of curious, like, how do you feel about that scene going on in LA if you've been able to insert yourself in there?
Yeah, it's great. I feel like I want to insert myself more into those sort of things. It's just, you stay busy with doing things. But no, Whammy's awesome. I've been there a lot. Some of our good friend of mine is in 2070, the band. They've played there a few times. I think Ian McPhee has played there. No, I think it's awesome. The only thing that bums me out about VHS now is there's this like people are buying it and flipping it. So a lot of those like a lot of the hobbies I love because they were like really accessible, like tapes and VHS and stuff, are getting like like everything is getting really expensive. So that's the only aspect, but that's not any fault to like Whammy, or there's like several places in LA, like Be Kind is another one. Vidiots. No, I think it's awesome that the culture is thriving,
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. But I mean, I guess that kind of happened with like cassettes too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And like all like new vinyl releases, it feels like they're all like $40, It's just
for sure.
The markups have been real bad there.
Yeah.
I don't play around with that, but I have gotten into buying VHS over the past couple of years, mostly because I put a limit, like a hard limitation on myself of it's got to be dirt cheap or it's got to be it's got to be music related, so that if I'm buying it, it's live shows or music video compilations or stuff like that. And that's really helped to kind of curate. And there's still a lot of available stuff there.
Yeah, it's out there. It's just, I think because people are starting to like flip it and stuff, it's, it's a little harder, especially because I'm like a huge fan of like 80s horror and that kind of stuff. So that stuff, particularly over the last like few years, has gotten harder and harder to find just in the wild. Because I'm the same. I try not to like pay a premium for that stuff. I love finding it out in the wild at a thrift store.
It's a lot more rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sick. I know you're saying this is kind of just like a tangent and stuff, but what kind of like old school horror movies are you into? Like, what are some of your favorites?
Texas Chainsaw 2 is like one of my all-time favorites. I really like the horror comedy 80s stuff.
All right.
Yeah, obviously Dawn of the Dead, all the like Fulci stuff, a lot of that, Italian 80s stuff is really cool. Yeah, Edge of the Axe is one that nobody seems to usually know, but that's a favorite from the 80s.
Never heard of that one before.
Yeah, I think it's probably on Tubi. All the great for free on Tubi.
No, sick. I'll have to check that out. What's it called? Tubi?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
TBI.
Oh, sick. Are you going to like any of like those like small like independent theaters in like LA and stuff like that too? Do you ever go to those?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I've got a good friend. He's been on the label and stuff, and he's a director. I hit up a lot of those spots with him. See like old John Carpenter movies on film, and
that's so sick.
Yeah, but there's a rich culture for that in LA, which is cool.
Dude, it's pretty sick. Like I feel like I've just been recently getting into like watching like more movies and stuff, and me and my girlfriend have been like just looking into like smaller theaters that are playing stuff on like film and whatnot, like the old movies and stuff. And there's this really sick theater by her house called like Gardena Cinema. It's like this like little like family owned like theater. Yeah, dude, it's sick.
Yeah, I follow them on Instagram. I need to go out there sometime. It's just a little bit of a trek, but
it's a trek.
It's a single screen.
Oh,
Thomas,
nice.
we gotta go.
Dude, Maddie, we should go. It's honestly like really cool. Yeah, it's sick. And then we also went to one called like Long Beach, like art cinema or something like that too. But there's a ton around LA that I want to go to. Just
Yeah.
can never find the time, I guess,
New Beverly is one I think everything in the show is on film.
Oh,
cool.
sick. Yeah, I've heard of the New Beverly, actually. I need to check that one out too.
I forget there's one in Santa Monica I've passed by, and that one's a landmark. They've always done some nice stuff. I forget.
Yeah, what's that one called? I forget.
I want to say it's the Regent or the New Art.
Maybe, yeah.
It might be one of those two.
I know there's like a famous one in Santa Monica, but anyways, I guess we can start talking about like, I don't know, how'd you get into like DIY and stuff? Like where did like your interest in like music and stuff start? Like all the way back to like the very beginning?
Yeah, I think at an early age, I like loved drawing and I loved music, just like fighting around.
Oh, yeah.
I had the little tape player with the little microphone on it,
Yeah.
And just got into like a lot of early hip hop and a lot of like the grunge stuff. And yeah, I like when I was in high school, I wrote for like a couple music websites, just doing like music reviews and stuff. And then in college, I lived with a bunch of dudes in this old Spanish church. And one of my roommates, James, we started throwing shows in our dining room. So that was like,
oh, that's sick.
That was like the major introduction. And I had like messed around with music with a roommate. But then suddenly we had this like, venue for it. So that's how I started playing shows, was just living in this house with like 7 other musicians, and we were all doing cool stuff.
How old were you at this point? Like when you started?
What's that?
How old were you at this point? Like when you started like having the shows in your dining room and stuff?
Probably like around 20, 21.
Okay, sick.
Yeah. And yeah, like honestly, that's the same thing that the label was born out of, was just being surrounded by all these cool people doing cool things and, just starting to put out their music. Yeah.
What were some of like the first projects you were in and stuff at that time? And like, where were you, by the way? Where was this taking place?
This was in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
We lived in this, like, it was like an old Spanish church where like the bottom was kind of like not condemned, but it wasn't functional. But that's like, I think, where the church part of it was. And then the upstairs was like this dormitory sort of thing. There were just a bunch of small bedrooms and then like a big dining room and a big kitchen. So yeah, just a bunch of us lived in there.
That's so cool.
And my first project was called Problems That Fix Themselves. It was just like an electronic, similar to Cop Funeral, but maybe a little less gnarly, I guess.
And here's The Last Cop Funeral. Great album.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah. So I just started playing. It was kind of a solo project, but I would have collaborators. And then it eventually evolved into a duo when I was living in Chicago. But that was like my first project. And then I joined, we kind of had like a free improv band called Rottenwood Moon with some other friends. And in that I was kind of doing like all sorts of different noise, whether it was like playing synth or doing weird stuff with radio frequencies, just all kinds of like, and that was like more of a full band kind of thing, like drums, guitar, bass, and then me doing noise stuff, but it was all improv. We did a couple records with that band, and then all my roommates had bands, so I put out a lot of that stuff too.
Oh, dang!
It ran the
gamut. Immediately having that network and that kind of like go to like want for it just made it super easy.
Yeah,
to start building a discography.
Yeah, it felt really organic, And back then, I obviously didn't know I would be doing it for a long time, but yeah, and it kind of, everybody was doing something different. Like our roommate was like, made this like really great bedroom pop. My best friend was doing this like punk band called Grow Fangs. So yeah, we were all doing cool different stuff, and it was just a very creative, very free, very safe feeling space, which was cool.
That's sick. So at what point did you like start the label and stuff? Like what year was it?
It was like the very end of like 2009 was sort of when it began.
What were you putting out at the time? You said it was just like your friends and stuff. Like those were your first releases.
Yeah. I had put out the first Problems That Fix Themselves tape on a different small label in Kalamazoo. And Rock Moon was like going on the band I was in was going on a little tour. So I just like home dubbed some copies of that sold out first album. And that was kind of the unofficial, official first Already Dead tape. And I think I just like gave those out on that tour.
Oh, really?
And then, I think the first couple of things were just kind of reissues of stuff I had done. And then the first proper like release was the second Problems That Fix Themselves album called Second. And at some point I was opening for Juju like in 2010.
Oh, that's wild.
Wow.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
crazy.
like I had this cool show to play, so I like got that record finished, and that was kind of the record release show for that. So that feels like the first like really proper release for the label. So
do you remember like the catalog number off the top of your head there?
That would have been like 83. Like it would have been like the third release.
83. That's crazy.
Okay, because it's interesting because you're saying 83, and there's that interview from 2013 with Sean Hartman that he did kind of on your behalf there for NPR when you had 74 releases. And at that point, you'd already had releases from Greece, Canada, Chile, Great Britain, Russia.
Oh, sorry, I meant AD3. So
AD3. I see.
Third release. Yeah.
We'll talk about that then later. But
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
We missed
the third release. Yeah.
But also then at that time that you're talking about, kind of larger picture of stuff in the Midwest, not immediately Michigan, but in Ohio, you have like Pizza Night, Beer on the Rug, Deception Island, Hasu Mountain, Orange Milk haven't quite started yet, or they're very, very infant stage at least. What was the tape scene to you like at that moment? Internet-wise, where were people linking up to even talk about any of these projects, if at all?
Yeah, it was a lot of like blogs. Like I remember just sending MediaFire links of that second Problems album to blogs, just like there wasn't, it's evolved a lot over time. It was just a lot of like people who ran small blogs, and you'd get like these really sweet write-ups and kind of connecting a little more organically, because it's also like the early days of like even Instagram and stuff like that. Obviously Facebook, and I had a MySpace at some point.
That's sick.
Doing that first project. So it's evolved a lot over time. It felt weirdly, it felt kind of easier back then, because I don't know, maybe there was like less noise. We weren't always on our phones all the time. So yeah.
And at least when did you kind of jump over to Bandcamp? Because Already Dead's always had a pretty strong website of its own presence from what I've seen or gathered. But the Bandcamp page has also been pretty critical, and the codes. There are many codes that come with stuff. So when you kind of jumped over, really started noticing.
Probably like 2011 or so, 2012. Yeah, pretty early. Because even when, like at that point, when new websites would pop up, you'd kind of, I don't know, I was always like wanting to claim at least the name. So somebody, so you're not like, not like on Instagram, for example, somebody has Cop Funeral as their like, just some dude has.
I've seen that. Yeah.
So regularly I have to tell people like, that's not me. So yeah, but no, Bandcamp was huge. And so like third release was my second album. And very quickly, just through like getting press in some of those blogs and stuff, we started getting submissions from like Greece and like, all over the world, really. And at that point, international shipping was like dirt cheap. So it was just like really easy to work with people all over, it was really dirt cheap to make tapes, and it was cheap to ship them. So just super accessible, which was like a big reason for doing tapes too.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask, like, why did you like get into tapes, like specifically? Like, I feel like this was like early on. Like, I feel like tapes are so big now. Yeah,
I think it definitely the label that I had put out my first record on was called Dinosaur Club Tapes. So that was definitely I just loved what they were doing, and there were other for a small town like Kalamazoo, there were like multiple people doing tape labels, which was cool.
Sick.
I just found that inspiring and. Yeah, at that point, like 2009, 2010, CDs just weren't that interesting. And And it also just tied back to my nostalgia for tapes. Like I loved tapes growing up, and I still have a lot of, like, I have tapes of me that I recorded when I was a little kid and stuff. So
Yeah.
definitely nostalgia. And I think it was also at a time when like streaming was becoming more and more popular. So it just brought like intention back to like owning a piece of music, you know?
Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm.
And again, it's such a trip to go through the early numbers of the series, because what I've realized already did just existed well before I started writing about tapes for Tabbia or doing anything in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
And going back through the archives, I was like, there's free cake for every creature. It'd be really fascinating if they'd like popped up on the label. Or then Claire Rose was doing stuff at the time, and she had kind of gone well on, but there's also then other figures like Binary Marketing Scheme that have stayed in that orbit, or currently Muave, that individual, I forget the individual behind that the trio that you guys had put out back in 2022, but there's always been on the catalog a real fostering of consistency. There's people that stop by for a couple releases, but then there are people that have been there for years or have been hanging out there. And I'm curious, like, how do you know, kind of demo policy wise, like who you want to work with, and then how kind of, at least, have you like anything changed over the years from that?
Yeah, I think over the years it's evolved because there is such a large pool of artists that I've worked with that I can stay busy just working with like the people I've known. Which is kind of the cool thing. Like I'm still pretty new to LA. It's cool to like get to know people here, like Ian McPhee and like Sobbing Honey, you know, just like people that really dig what they're doing. And so definitely there's like a community aspect. Like I want to be working with people that we live in the same place and, you know, can, you know, collaborate and work together in the scene and stuff. But yeah, just also having that huge pool of artists I've worked with for years now. A lot of it's that, and it's harder to take on more, you know, in terms of just like cold demos. Cause yeah, like Free Cake for Every Creature. I think I had met her we used to table at Pitchfork Fest when I lived in.
Oh, sick. Yeah.
I think she just like came up to the table and was like a huge fan of Radiator Hospital, which we had done.
Oh, wow, dude. That's wild.
Like when I was, so like the early days, like throwing house shows in Kalamazoo, Sam from Radiator Hospital lived in Grand Rapids. So we played shows with his like earlier bands, and so it's just like kind of organic like that.
That's sick.
Like, also at that time, were you familiar with Moonglyph at all? And because they had also tabled Pitchfork Fest, and they were in the Midwest at that time. I know Steve was there.
Yeah, I was definitely aware of them. I don't know if I knew them like well, you know. It was kind of random who you clicked with or whatever. And yeah, you know, like labels came and went for sure, just because of the time length that we've been doing the label. So there's people that were around in the early days that, you know, aren't as fresh in my mind, but like, yeah, I definitely knew of Moonglyph. Trying to think of some of those other earlier labels that were doing it way before we were, you know, and I was just definitely inspired by a lot of those labels, just chugging along, you know, putting out a lot of cool stuff, especially before it was popular. Cause I think Already Dead kind of predates that popularity of the tape coming back.
Yeah, for sure.
There were labels doing it like way before we were. So
no, and that's the thing is, it had come up in the interviews you've done, or that the label's been approached with doing, of like, cassettes are back has always been this angle. Even Thomas, I mean, you kind of teased that a bit there, but it's like the label is featured in Mark Masters' book from last year, High Bias, and you guys have a cut on the compilation. I don't have it with me right now, but again, what was because Mark has been a real supporter of the label over the last decade plus, and I'm curious, like, how had you gotten in contact with him or other critics over, as kind of blog cult architecture moved away into more like a few different sites or a few different contributors? How did you keep getting the word out?
It's hard, honestly, because it is like a tiny operation. Over the years, I've had people help me. But since like the pandemic stuff, it's been mostly just me doing everything. So it is hard. And I think it just happens organically over time. Like Mark being I don't even know how Mark and I finally connected, but I think when you share those similar interests and you're doing it for long enough, you know, your paths will probably cross. similar with like a lot of the people who have done stuff with Tabs Out, you know, like Ryan Masteller and other people. I don't really know when we first met, but it's just like, you know, just trying to share that stuff, not be annoying, like emailing people, you know. And yeah, you kind of figure out who's into what you're doing and who maybe isn't into it, you know, or whatever. Yeah, I think just consistency, honestly, just.
And again, something that I've really appreciated about the label is really, really honest, open to all sound.
Yeah, that's what I think is sick too.
It's a very all genre label to a degree that like something I've appreciated is that I've bought a couple of tapes off of the strength of a Quietus review or Mark Masters piece, and there's been an additional tape sent in there. There's been an additional code. Yeah. And again, just with like the openness of that curation and kind of what, at least to you, has been one of like the riskiest, you would say, if at all, like tapes that you've kind of have put out there, like a sound that you didn't originally think like this could fit on here, but then really took off and did well. If anything comes to mind.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if anything feels risky, because I would say it's hard. It's really hard to gauge what might take off and what might not. Yeah. There's things where you're like, oh, this is for sure going to move or whatever. And maybe it moves slowly. And then there's other stuff that just totally takes off. I would say one that was like surprising was Michael Potter, he does like tapes and stuff.
Yeah, the guard. Yeah.
The first, he has this like harsh noise project called Serrator, and that first tape, I think we dropped like a thing of 100 tapes, and it sold out in like 2 days. Which
really,
usually harsh noise for Already Dead, I think, because we don't really fall into that category of harsh noise labels. We do like a couple a year, maybe. Usually harsh noise moves just a little slower for us. So that was cool to see that. Like, also because Michael's been like a good friend and collaborator for ever. Also been doing it in a very long time. So I
mean, again, because he has the Garden. I think he has the Garden Portal release on your label, so that's where that kind of progenites from. But one of his 2019 releases is really good on the label. I forget the name of that one, but it's just like a sound. One sound, at least I know the label has done, I think, a really phenomenal job of documenting. It's not quite an ambient Americana, but more of like a free-form jam. You see then some of Potter's stuff, the Royal Arctic Institute from last year, and then a couple other of kind of there's a couple live tapes that I can't immediately think off the top of my head, but you've released over the past couple years. The Weekend Satanist one being one of them, and then there's a 2022 EP with a black and white cover. But all of those, to me, like, it's interesting because the labels consistently around the clock got 1 to 2 things out a month, and always having a different little dispatch on a sound.
Yeah.
And you're like, how is kind of your ear developed, you would say, over that decade plus of doing this?
Well, I think the label kind of reflects who I am as like a listener. So I don't I don't listen to like the same thing all the time, you know? So I don't want to be just putting out, and I think like when I started the label, people wanted to kind of pigeonhole it as a noise label. And I love noise, but I didn't want it to just be that, you know, if, you know, I had one of my roommates was doing bedroom pop, you know, and I knew I wanted to do the like, lo-fi bedroom pop. So I think it's just, you know, it just really reflects who I am as a listener. Like every month I want it to be different. You know, I don't want to do the same thing over and over. And it's cool how receptive people are to that. You know, we have a tape club that's like an annual membership, and it's cool. Just there are people who will pay for a whole year of tapes, having no idea what they're going to get, other than like maybe knowing the history of the label. But there's no guarantee on like what bands are going to have new material this year and what, you know. So it's cool. I think it's like filling a niche that maybe other labels are doing. You know, a lot of labels are focused on certain.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. So. A lot of labels are like focused on like a specific genre or like sound, but it's cool how like Already Dead is like there's a lot of like labels that like throw around the all genre thing, like Leaving Records or something like that, but they don't actually like sound super like all genre, you know what I mean? But it's like, I feel like already dead like actually can use that label and be like,
yeah,
we actually
like,
are, you know?
yeah. And I think that can honestly be a little challenging because people do want to like fit you into like something.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're a noise label or you're like a free jazz label. So it is challenging sometimes because yeah, it is like all over the board. But it's fun and I think it's cool like how many people are open to that. You know, my wife does like indie folk music and people who buy the Cop Funeral thing, I see them buy like her tape. So it's cool.
Oh, really? That's
that.
sick.
Like,
yeah,
our music
sick,
is
yeah.
like polar opposites, honestly. So it's cool, you know, just to see that people are like really similar to me, like where, you know, I love pop music, I love noise, metal, all of it. So
yeah, I feel like I kind of like just resonate you in like that way, like the way I do my radio show too. It's like a lot of people have their radio show like super specifically curated to like only a specific sound. Like they only do indie, they only do like noise or jazz or whatever. But it's like, I don't know, with my show, I feel like I would get bored of that. So I like to do a little bit of everything when I can. You know what I mean?
totally.
Even I mean, again, just like some of the electronic that's come out on the label, I go back to that the stuff with Nandeli Maguni. I think that's just such a fascinating relationship that you were able to foster there in 2020 and 2022. And that's the kind of stuff that it's really hard to get that kind of music, even domestically in America, that an American label would want to put out and give to an American audience at a price that isn't going to be import or export. Mm-hmm. And I know, again, he had a release on Jollies last year that I thought was equally as thrilling.
Yeah, that's a good tape. I have that one.
Just along with that, and this was kind of stuff that you had talked about in some of the interviews in the 2010s that really has become enshrined with the label. Like Ian McPhee's release has a zine. Muave has a VHS. 2021's Cop Funeral has a t-shirt. A lot of different, like Crash Cymbals has done a lot of really good, fun thematic stuff. They're another label that kind of fits into this vibe, and they've stayed the course like you as well, but they don't have that same crazy release schedule and crazy like putting out all the different kinds of merch. And I'm wondering how you got in the mindset of putting out different merch and visuals with albums and giving that comfort to artists and being able just kind of like to bankroll that, go up front for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like, again, another reason why I started the label is I just like making stuff. Like I'm a visual artist. I just like, I don't know, even like, you know, we produce all of our tapes in house and like, I enjoy doing it. You know, it gets me off the computer, off of email, whatever. And I don't know, I just think of like when I was a kid getting into music, it was just exciting to like get a band shirt or get, I don't know, like have a zine come with something or, you know, just, I don't know, those little extras. And that's why like, with our orders, I throw in like stickers and, you know, always throw in download codes and stuff. Cause at the end of the day, I just want people to listen to this stuff. You know, it's not like, you know, you don't start a tape label to get rich. So, I think it just comes from my just like having fun with it, you know, like what would I want if I was buying music? So, it's fun. Like I have a few things cooking for Cop Funeral this year, and I'm trying to think of fun, stupid things that could come with those releases just to make it more fun and, you know.
So do those things that come with like the releases, do you leave that up to like the artist to decide, or are you kind of like pointing them in a direction that you feel like would be cool? Or
it depends, you know. I mean, there's obviously like financial constraints with things, so it's not like every release I'm like, let's do extra merch. But like a couple of years ago, we did like a VHS release with Heavy Lolo, like this hardcore band from the aughts, and you know, I was like, let's do a beer koozie to come with the VHS, you know, because it was just like fun and
that's sick.
Why not? You know, so I think it's like when the inspiration's there, like Mandel is like such an important collaborator. I love that dude and so supportive. So when we were doing that Mauve tape, I don't know how to say their name, but when we were doing that live tape, you know, they had the whole concert film. So I was like, let's do like a super short run of tapes of that, like VHS of that. So I think it's just one of the inspirations there, honestly.
What's been like the most like, I guess, I don't know, one of your favorite like extras to come with a record?
Oh man, that's a good question. Like that I've bought from like another label.
I mean that, or like that you've put out too. Yeah, whatever.
I mean, I really love VHS. So just when we can do that, it's super fun. We reissued one of Heavy Heavy Lolo's. Usually with those guys, like the singer is like a great visual artist. So he kind of inspires me to like come up with things. Like we reissued one of their first EPs on tape. We did these like keychains shaped like cassettes.
Oh, that's
that was
sick.
super fun. Just figuring that out, you know? So yeah, that is definitely one of them. Like cool, weird stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that just trinkets or whatever that come with like records is cool. Like Claire Rousey did like a flute or something like that, right? Like a clay flute.
There was the little ceramic ornamental flute or whatever.
Yeah, that was sick.
Nice.
I'm thinking about, I don't know why, just thinking about Claire, because I was just thinking of I would love if a VHS, she would do a VHS of something from that already dead era. I know I remember because I have the first edition of A Heavenly Touch, not the second edition, the first. And that tape sold out really quickly and was a big shock, at least for me in 2020.
Yeah.
And I know that's being reissued on vinyl on other labels now. And it's like, especially with artists, do you kind of do a handshake deal and give them their rights?
Yeah. Like with Claire, honestly, she just outgrew the label, which is that's awesome. Like I think that's the whole. So yeah, in that case, it was just kind of like, you know, I think like the vinyl release mentions that it was originally released by Already Dead, and like I think it's just cool, like honoring that original agreement, you know, and yeah, I think it's cool when that's another rare case. Like that tape, I loved that album, and it was cool to see it similar to that Serrator tape. It was just like, because I'd done other things with Claire and they sold like pretty normally, you know, and then that one, it sold out. The first run sold out within like a day or two, and that's why we were kind of like, let's do another run. And yeah, I think she was just getting a lot of starting to blow up around that time, which was awesome.
You also had like an early like Maury's release as well, right?
Yeah, I did a ton of stuff with Maury. Yeah, early projects with different names.
Oh, sick.
Fibro, which was like kind of a shoegazy metal album.
Oh, dude, that's cool.
Yeah. Maury's was like one of the, I would say, pretty early artists for the label, like working together since probably like 2012 or so. Yeah.
How did you meet her?
Oh man, I think maybe they just submitted, you know, to the label, and again, it was like 12 years ago, so it was just like still building that early community. And we used to do this Already Dead family reunion music festival in Kalamazoo, where
sick.
Where Sean, who I had originally started the label with, he would kind of put that together. That was sort of his role in the label. And I know Maurice came and played that a few times. So did Claire.
Oh, dude, that's so sick.
Yeah, I think that's like how a lot of those early relationships got really like solid. So we did that from like 2011 till 2019. Yeah.
What kind of music I haven't listened to like the old like Claire tape and stuff. What kind of music was she doing back then? Like when she would play like the fest? Like I just know that like my first release I found from her was like on Astral Spirits, and it was like free drumming stuff.
Yeah. A lot of when she first played the festivals, it was that, like more percussive stuff. Yeah. And she had a band. She was in a band called the Freebies, and they did a split with Maurice.
Oh, dude, that's so sick.
Probably like 2016, 2017. Yeah. So
that makes sense there.
Yeah.
That's cool. I also want to talk too about just like, I don't know, the way you like do all of your tapes in house. Like, how are you able to manage that? Like, do you have like a ton of recorders and stuff?
Yeah, I just have a bunch of decks. You know, we do everything in real time. When I started the label, I bought some of those Sony high-speed duplicators from like a church, and they worked for a couple years. But I don't know, the high-speed thing, at least, I don't know, it's hard to maintain. And nobody knows how to fix them. Whereas like, you know, cassette decks are easier to maintain and service. And so, yeah, I just have a bunch of decks, and it's just like, I think I've gotten better at managing my time and my commitments and things, like there was a year where I put out almost like 50 tapes, and that was just like really
That's
dysfunctional.
insane. Yeah.
And that was when I was like working full time as a designer too. So I think I was just like raging against hating that corporate life. So I'm like, I'm going to put out every person's music that I can.
Everything's getting greenlit this year.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I have to, like, I'm just learning how to like say no and be like, I don't have the resources to do this, so that I can manage things and also have energy to do my own projects and things. So yeah, I think just, you learn over time. I've been doing it a long time, so I've gotten a lot better at managing. Like for me, doing 1 to 2 tapes a month, I can manage that, because it's usually 100 tape runs of each. So
how long does it take you to like dub 100 tapes? Like, I feel like that would take so long.
It greatly varies. I'm about to start working on one that's like a 95-minute tape. So that's going to take a long time. Whereas like the live Copter tape I just did is like 20 minutes aside. So, it just varies, but it can be a few days to a couple of weeks.
And where are you getting all of your stock from? I know you were saying like you've had to deal with just like, I don't know, we were talking about this like in person before the gig, and you're just saying that you've had to deal with like quality control issues and stuff by getting like tape.
Yeah. I've had I've switched people over the years, but mostly now I get it from Analog Media Tech, which is in Canada. I've had good luck with them, and if there's issues, they're like easy to work with and stuff. So yeah.
Did you have like a preferred like type of tape before you had to start buying like newer stuff, I guess? Like, were you able to buy like old stock?
Yeah, I think the earlier days of the label, I eat like 2010, 2011, and you could go on eBay and find like lots of, I remember I got like 1,000 old new stock of tapes for like $100 or something. I mean, at that point, it was so cheap, and there was like a surplus of it, whereas now, with newer tape, I think it can be challenging. I'm not sure. Yeah. Some people are like making new tape. I think some people are still sourcing old, like the original stock of tape. So
that's crazy. How is there still like original stock? Like, that's wild. I wonder how long it was produced for back then.
I don't know.
Stuff went into the aughts, I'm pretty certain, but I've never found any like confirmation or proof or anything.
I know there was like a lot like over in Japan and stuff, like that's where a lot of sellers in America, like they brought back like tons of tape.
Oh, they'd bring it back. Interesting.
Because of kind of the time though that Already Dead has been around, have you also been able to get the tape into record shops or other kinds of like cassette retailers online? Is there other kind of people that come to you specifically for mail order stuff to sell in their own spots?
Yeah. It changes over time, like things. When I was living in Chicago, there was a distro called Carrot Top. It was run by Saki Records. But that shop closed and they folded the distro. So for years they were like distroing our stuff. I have like a digital distributor for streaming, which is what it is, but it's they're great. They're helpful. It's nice to not have to like pay to get things on streaming. And that's something like completely optional to our artists, because everybody, it's like a conflicted thing. But when I was living in New York, Rough Trade would
sick.
hit me up for stuff like specific releases, like that Maury's freebies, the Claire's brand. They had did like a feature on that, and Mezzanine Swimmer is another good friend, Mike. The record he put out when we lived there, we did like vinyl and tape for that. They like did kind of like an end cap feature. And like now, Graveface Records, who I tabled alongside at Pitchfork for like 10 years, they
awesome.
just do our stuff. But honestly, I stay busy enough just selling it. It's a little hard to stay on top of. And it's hard to get distro for tapes. It's a little harder than it is for vinyl. I think they're just like, they're not as down to take the risk on tapes. I think there's still some like resistance towards that with.
Oh, really?
older music people. Yeah. But yeah, we do a good, most of it is just through our websites, like the Already Dead site and Bandcamp. And yeah, when people reach out, I'm always down. We've sent, like, sometimes overseas, like record stores and stuff, they'll reach out and get a batch of stuff. So.
Oh, that's cool. I was going to say, yeah, like, is there like any shops in particular in like Japan or anything that like order some of your tapes to sell? I know Japan has a big like tape culture.
Yeah. There's been a few. I don't really know like how to say their names, but
yeah, no worries.
Yeah, there's been a few over the, they'll place an order like a couple times a year or something. Yeah.
So sick. And when did you start like doing vinyl? When did you decide you wanted to do that?
I think we did our first record in like 2011. It just has varied. And for a long time, Sean, who I started the label with, was working. He was like running a record store, so we would kind of like co-release stuff, which helped the financial end of making that happen.
Yeah.
But in general, I just love doing stuff in house. So vinyl's a little trickier with that.
Yeah.
But, we do like, I think the last couple of years we've done like one record a year, which feels manageable.
Yeah, for sure. CDs are kind of coming back. Do you see yourself like getting into CDs at all?
I put out the Cop Funeral record on just like mash up all my words. I put out Jake, the Cop Funeral record last year on CD.
Sick.
For fun and to see how it sold. And it's definitely not the same as vinyl and tapes, but I sold a bunch when we announced it, and playing live, there's always like somebody at a show who like has a CD player in their car or something. Yeah. So
we're still around. We're happy.
Yeah.
But
I feel
actually, this kind of, or Thomas, I had one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of at least, because certain artists tailor to certain formats, there's a couple of guys that have come through the label, kind of storied to their own capacity. You had Germ Class last year early on, was it 2022? And that's a German army moniker, if I recall. And then you've had Bob Bucko Jr. in the past. And both of those guys are hardcore tape fiends. German army in particular is like a tape legend and it's pretty much just gone through many different labels. But what was it like to get a chance kind of for them to come over to Already Dead?
Yeah, Bob, I've known Bob a long time now. And yeah, he's great. He played the Already Dead Fest like pretty much every year we did it. And he's just a great dude. I think we're going to like Bob has a band called Sex Funeral. So I think there will eventually be a Cop Funeral, Sex Funeral split.
That's sick. Yeah.
We're just emailing about that. So
big funeral day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, the German army dude, he's great. He's like anonymous. But I have like met him and we hung like shortly after I moved to LA. Just a really cool dude, like always making cool shit. Yeah.
He's sent me packages in the mail from reviews and I'm like, okay, there's like another 2 like great German army albums, because every time I listen, I'm pretty shocked at the consistency. And again, whenever you give something a different moniker, that's just very helpful for defining. And that Germ Class was such a nice treat. Really different kind of change, something a little bit more punky from what he did.
Yeah, the last time we did a comp for Already Dead, I had just hit him up like, hey, if you've got something, like you want to submit. And he was like, can I submit 3 projects? And I'm like, sure. So like the most recent Already Dead comp has 3 different German army projects on it.
That's so funny. I guess, should we jump into and talk a little bit about Cop Funeral too?
I think that should bring us to the realm of personal questions. We've asked you about the label to death. We've asked you about all these different people that you've put out, but can we really talk about using your label to self-release Cop Funeral?
Yeah.
Again, so at least this is a moniker that you've been using since around 2016, if not a little bit earlier. What brought you to the moniker itself? And then what's really been shifting for you pre-2020 to some of the post-2020 works?
Yeah. The name came from like the very first Problems That Fix Themselves record had a song called Cop Funeral on it. And when I moved out of Detroit, when I left Chicago, that was a duo I was doing. So it kind of felt time to retire that project. so that was kind of where Cop Funeral started, was just doing solo stuff. I had just moved to New York. So yeah, like I had done an EP in like 2012 but I'd never played shows or anything. So yeah, I think picked up the project in like 2016. And just started playing shows, honestly, because I had worked with so many artists in New York that, it just felt really organic to start playing shows there. And honestly, one of my favorite like music communities was New York. Just like, I feel like whatever you're doing in New York, you can find like your people. And I definitely did. And then, yeah, like living in Atlanta and the pandemic and stuff, I didn't really like find a scene in Atlanta for that. I put out some cool, some stuff I'm like proud of when I lived there, but I had kind of like late 2019 decided like, I'm going to take a break from playing shows. And then obviously like quarantine happened. So
yeah,
unintentional, like 3-year break. I started playing Cop Funeral shows again in LA, like this time last year. So, just, it really felt like 2022. I didn't really do much with the project, which was weird and just not great. And I had like Jake, I pretty much started working on Jake the moment I put out the record before it, called Pain, in 2019. So a lot of that Jake stuff I had been working on in pieces since 2019. And then I think just starting to deciding to start playing shows in LA this time a year ago, I was like, okay, I need to finish this record and get back into playing shows. And honestly, playing shows really shapes like where the music goes. I just, I played a handful of shows last year and just met a lot of great people in LA and stuff. I went to New York and played a show out there. So yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, I was just thinking about this when I was prepping for that Control disco show. I sort of was like figuring out my setup, and I practiced a song from like 2015, and it felt so different. Like I could feel how much the sounds had evolved and stuff. So
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very personal and very kind of get out the like bad feelings sort of project,
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think a lot of it is sound exploration. And that's kind of where the songwriting starts for that project. So I think it's just evolved over time because of that, it is an exploration. So it's evolved pretty organically over time. And yeah, playing shows has really helped that too.
It was interesting for me because it's possible some of the first stuff I would have got for Tabs Out would have been the split that you had in 2020. And I had heard a few of the Already Dead stuff that was going on kind of in that orbit at the time. And I heard, as I have the title over here, Meditations and Discomfort in 2021. And I was really struck when I heard Jake last month finally sitting end of a pile for the top 200 list. There's a real sense of kind of, I don't want to say outright pop melody because it's a very noisy project, but there to me was a real direction to the noise. There was some really great drone movement or kind of a sense of structure that I was super excited in those songs to see. And it amazed me again because you had just been working on it over the past 4 years, but in those live shows that you were doing last year, kind of how were you approaching your sound explorations at the time? Really, was it just improvising stuff, or did you kind of start to see repetitions and loops coming into play?
Yeah, I think there's like two modes for Cop Funeral. So there's like that meditations tape kind of is totally free improv. It's like, and coming out of a place of writer's block for writing songs, because out of that exploration, I do like Jake is like mostly like songs I've, have like written, whereas a couple of the other tapes I've done are just like free improv stuff, like free improv noise. So I think, yeah, it's like through that exploration, figuring out things that work to form like a cohesive song. And then from there, like, because my sets are usually seamless, so figuring out ways that, one movement can lead into the next. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to ask too, Do you feel like it was easy to kind of like find, I don't know, you were talking about like playing shows in like LA and whatnot. Do you feel like it was easy to kind of like integrate yourself like in the different cities that you've been in to like find shows or like, yeah, do you feel like that kind of like just the way the scenes were in like these different regions kind of like played a role in like, I don't know, the way your music shifted or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think New York and LA specifically, people just seem so like welcoming in a way that kind of surprises me. And I don't know if that's, I think like having done the label helps because sometimes people are like, oh, I've heard of the label and, you know,
yeah, they kind of know who you are a little bit. Like,
but yeah, it gives a little bit of an introduction. It's not like a cold, like, hey, I'm Josh, you know, like,
yeah,
that helps. But yeah, you know, like I played Coaxial for the first time last year, and that was kind of like the unofficial Jake release show. And they were just so like welcoming and sweet. And it felt like vulnerable because I hadn't really been playing shows. I had played a show in January and then I booked this like June show for the Jake release. And then for like the rest of the year, I was playing pretty consistently. But that specifically that Coaxial show, I felt kind of like I didn't have my footing yet with like playing shows again. So I would say, yeah, it had an impact because it just felt really encouraging and like kind of like those spaces I grew up playing, like just, you know, like-minded people. And yeah, everybody's like doing weird, cool shit, but they're also like, in my experience, so many of the people I've met have been like really friendly and welcoming. So
yeah, I could see that kind of inspiring you because it's like, oh, that was like fun. I actually enjoy that. I don't know. Maybe make more,
like
create more. Yeah, exactly.
Going to Ventura, I had no idea what to expect. You know, I had like been Instagram friends with Scott, you know, the slug spitter dude. But I was like, cool, I'll go meet this dude. I'll meet, you know, Tom, and it's just, you know, I was like down for whatever it ended up being, but that was like super fun. I feel like I made like 20 friends at that show. You know, it's cool. Like,
yeah.
Kind of an unexpected, you know, surprise, but it's encouraging. Like that show is super fun. And yeah, I feel like it just more collaboration comes out of that. You know, I hadn't met Sobbing Honey, and like those dudes are super.
Dude, those guys are like LA legends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an already dead release coming down. I can see it.
We're talking. Yeah.
We're talking.
Dude, that'd be sick. Yeah. Like, yeah, Grant and Mike are so cool, dude. Like, yeah, they're like inspirations to me. Like when I first met them, like they were playing with like this like band called Dinosaurs with Horns. Do you remember that, Maddie? That band when they played Biko?
Yes.
Yeah, it was like Dinosaurs with Horns. And then Mike was playing in this band called Dr. Nine, which was like one of like, I don't know, did you meet Rob McGill at that show in Ventura? I think he might have been there, but Rob McGill runs like a really sick label out of Ojai called Weird Cry. And he put out like, he was playing with that band and he put out like their album and stuff. Yeah. It was just like this jazz. Yeah. And yeah, they're just legends, dude. They're so cool. So that's sick that you're going to potentially like do stuff with them. That's awesome.
Yeah. They were like, they asked if we could submit something and I was like, please do, you know? Yeah, when I met Mike, he just like gave me a hug. Like it's like not like you expect, like, you know, coming into like, I don't know, like different scenes I've played shows in, people are like a little, you know, doing the cool thing. So just, I don't know. LA has felt more friendly than expected, which is awesome.
Cool, dude. Well, I'd love to hear that you're thriving in Southern California, dude. That's awesome.
And I think I'm done moving too, so I should be here.
Woo.
We love to hear that, dude. We'll get some more. We'll get some more cop funeral shows. It'll be sick.
Awesome.
That's good. Hey, now you're part of the LA tape and VHS scene.
Yeah,
true, dude.
That's a really good settle.
Yeah.
And you're part of tape history in High Biased.
Yeah.
Dude, I need to get that book still. I saw it at this cool bookstore in Los Angeles.
Thomas, you should have bought it.
I should have bought it, dude. I don't know why. I just didn't get it. I was like, I'm going on a date. I gotta spend money on the date. I can't be spending money on the book right now. I should have bought it anyways. You know what I mean?
Josh, have you had a chance to read your excerpt of the interview and all of the High Biased?
Yeah, I read I haven't finished the book, but I read the last chapter first just because, you know, I know a lot of those people. And that was like that was the part I was most excited for, but it's a great book.
I was going to say, like I really give a lot of prop to Mark's accessibility and writability. I need to re-rent No Wave because I want to have that if we get to talk to him. But
Yeah.
That last chapter, I really, because the first 5, I was like, okay, it's good general info. But his last chapter, there was like a subtle, he seemed to be making an argument without ever actually quite making the argument, but it was all left in little quotes or certain tidbits to me of like, there's this great new sound and you just have to go out and search for it. And then it was like some of the stuff with the Hasu guys where they talk about some of the stuff we're putting out we really can't master for other releases, but it works perfectly on tape.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something very nice. It to me really felt like the strongest way, because he again interrogates that cassette is back narrative that there's been a decade of. And I felt very hopeful reading that for the first time in a music book and seeing something good with cassette of like removing it from being a technology that's old or anachronistic, but just letting it exist as it's a very human piece of technology. And you could do this. You could have up to 420 something tapes on your label right now.
Yeah.
Because of it.
It's awesome. Mark is such a champion of like all us weirdos making music and tapes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
We want to eventually get Mark on the show too and like chat with.
Yeah, he's a great dude. You should.
I think it'll be happening.
Well, I don't know, Maddie, does that kind of do it for all of our questions here? Do we have anything else we wanted to add?
I mean, just a couple of things probably coming into the final corner here. Not really necessarily a favorite already dead release, but something that you got to hear last year that you were a big fan of and wanted to shout out.
Last year, man, I feel like my memory is going.
Yeah.
Man, that's a good question.
I feel like 2070 is probably one of my favorite bands that I've discovered.
Yeah.
last year.
2070 is amazing. I will always shout them out. I know they're working on new stuff. And Trevor's just been a good friend for a long time. So yeah, I guess 2070, really cool band they're constantly playing shows in LA, which is awesome. And
Yeah, they're sick. We got a cool one coming up with them in March. We're going to do one in the Valley at Thea. You know Thea, right? Ian's girlfriend. Yeah. So Thea's bookstore is doing shows and we're going to host this band from New York there. And we got 2070 to play as well. So
I gotta come out for that.
sick.
Maybe.
It's going to be sick, dude.
I have to go to that one. She told me about the bookstore. I need to check it out.
Dude, it's so cool. I've been to like the one show that they like did there and I'm like, dude, there needs to be more shows at like bookstores. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
But
And then I think I got one final question, Thomas.
yeah, do it.
Because earlier you were mentioning being into early hip hop. I was assuming kind of pre-90s electro stuff. What's some favorites there? What are stuff that at least you grab for hip hop wise these days?
I mean, like my all-time favorites are like Gangstar, like Tribe Called Quest. I got to see Tribe Called Quest on their last tour.
Wow.
Dude, that's sick.
One of the best shows I've ever seen.
They were super good.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, Fife had passed, but it was just like a cool tribute and it felt like a celebration. And it was kind of like the end of the band. So it was cool. That was a lot of that like 90s East Coast stuff, though, is some of my favorite stuff.
Street Pride.
Yeah.
I'm slowly getting
stuff I was listening to when I was like 10 years old,
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You're set. You're just set right there.
Yeah.
It's the peak.
Yeah.
Well, sick. Are there any like contemporary hip hop artists that you're into too?
Yeah. Living in Atlanta for a little while, I got into like a little bit of like some of that, like, I don't know, there's like some weird kind of like trap artists, like Sick Boy Rari is cool.
Oh, sick, dude.
There's a dude, Nicholas F. I think he's from like North Carolina. He does stuff. He does some stuff with like Lil Ugly Mane.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, he's sick too.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are some of them.
Awesome, dude.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Well, I guess where can people keep up with all things Already Dead, Cop Funeral?
Yeah, Instagram, Already Dead Tapes. AlreadyDeadTapes.com is the best way to like check out stuff. And then my Instagram is just my name, Josh Tabbia.
Cool.
That's where, don't follow at Cop, that's not me.
Yeah. I think you also like just put out a release today too, right? Or was it the day before?
I announced a new one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. Oh, you announced
February.
And you also do have live Cop funeral tape out alongside Jake. You can pick up both right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a return to the noise. Big noise performance.
Yeah.
Sick. Well, we do have one more question for you. It's kind of like the biggest of the show. Do you want to take it, Maddie?
Thomas, I'll do it today.
Yeah, do it.
This one in a bit. So, let's see here. You're going down to the VHS trade. You've got your new stock of already dead VHS tapes you're passing around at the table. And you open up your box of tapes, and it turns out there's a rat that's inside of it. And that rat is going to jump in your mouth, Josh. There's nothing you can do here about it, but you can choose if you want that rat to jump head first or butt first. And why?
I don't know. I would say head first. I think because butts gross me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Logical. Yeah. Took the logical approach.
Somehow cleaner, hopefully.
Yeah.
Maybe not really, but at least it, psychologically it feels that way to me.
It makes it seem like you're giving him a nice little goodnight kiss or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't dislike rats, but I don't think I want anything's like butt in my mouth,
Yeah.
And the rat understands this. The rat knows this instinctively. He's not offended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Net Radio every Saturday at 4. Be sure to tune in next week. Or this week, we have an interview. Oh, wait. I don't know why I'm saying that. I'm going to cut that. Anyways, yeah. Thanks so much for being here, Josh. That was sick.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you all.